Oh, look who it is. The boy savior. This moment in Arcane has been replaying in my head over and over again ever since I witnessed it back in 2021. In 3 minutes, this one scene managed to tell us more about the history between two characters than most other shows can do in an entire season. I want to spend this video breaking down what makes this moment in Arcane Season 1 so special and explain to you the genius level of storytelling they managed to pull off in these 3 minutes. Let me show you why Ekko vs Jinx is the best fight in all of animation. In any good fight scene, we are treated to a visual spectacle that shows off the abilities of both fighters, strengthen their characterization, and help us understand both of them a little better. Usually, this is done with long dragged out monologues about each other's philosophies and mentalities while explaining what their abilities do. What elevates Ekko vs Jinx is that only a single line is spoken between the two before the exchange begins, and everything about them is told to us through visuals alone. What Arcane does is turn the spectacle into the storytelling. Jinx calls Ekko the boy savior in a snarky and sarcastic tone, a line that is delivered with the kind of resentment that only comes from two people who have a shared history. Ekko responds to her using just his facial expressions. First, he gives a frustrated sigh, lamenting the loss of his old friend and childhood crush Powder, who has been replaced with this maniac known as Jinx. There's even a line of dialogue in the game League of Legends that confirms Ekko had a crush on Powder before she became Jinx. Ekko then smiles because deep down, he really missed her, and even this demented visage of the person he used to care about brought up a sense of nostalgia he had for those days when they were both innocent. This leads the boy savior to take out his pocket watch, which serves multiple storytelling purposes. The pendulum-like swinging lays the groundwork for the amazing musical number that frames the scene. Each tick is on beat with the song Dynasties and Dystopias, which in itself has lyrics that are so meaningful for the two of them. More on that later. The pocket watch also displays Ekko's precision with time and how perfect he has gotten with his ability to time things, so much so that he could dodge Jinx's bullets. The watch also represents time itself and symbolizes Ekko being brought back to his nostalgic childhood with Jinx when they would play games instead of what they're currently doing on this bridge. Lastly, the watch is also an invitation to Jinx to play one last game with him, just like old times, to join him in his nostalgia. Jinx, who at this point still had some powder left in her, instantly recognizes the invitation and accepts, giving the same nostalgic smile Ekko does at the beginning of their encounter. She scoffs, remembering how she would always be the winner whenever they played these games as children. This fight between the two of them didn't begin on this bridge, but rather it began in their childhoods. The watch swings and both Ekko and Jinx are reverted back to their younger forms, telling the audience that they have done this so many times before as children. Once Ekko clicks on his stopwatch, the gritty and realistic scene that we're seeing immediately switches to a stylized and vibrant representation of their childhoods. This stylized sequence communicates to the audience their unspoken bond and gives us so much insight into the wonder and joy they had together as kids before the world swallowed them both up. This scene is like a painting depicting how both Ekko and Jinx see the world. Ekko sees the world in seconds at a time and perceives everything in slow motion because of how precise he calculates everything. Jinx sees the world as a jumbled mess of colors where the past and present blend together due to her trauma and psychosis trapping her in a childlike mentality. It's here that Arcane fills us in on the relationship between these two, as well as what happened after the two of them became estranged. Ekko, since the scene began, has been framed with light behind him, illuminating him and creating a contrast to Jinx, who was framed with darkness behind her. Even in their shared stylistic vision, Ekko is still bathed in a bright light that is getting closer and closer to Jinx's darkness. Jinx takes aim at Ekko, pushing him away with her bullets and closing off anyone who might be able to pull Powder from the darkness. As Ekko is getting closer and closer to Jinx, to Powder, we see behind him a Firelight, which is a fictional glowing insect that became the symbol for his revolutionary group. Meanwhile, his blue-haired adversary is depicted with a crow behind her. These two animals are another piece of this artistic puzzle that is this fight. Let's start with Ekko's Firelight. Why is he being represented by this insect? Well, in the show, we are shown that Firelights are everywhere and thrive in Zaun despite its adverse conditions. This matches Ekko's philosophy and mentality extremely well, being a hardy and determined young man who overcame everything and still maintained his sanity and morality. The most important symbolism of the Firelights is that they are free, which mirrors the freedom that Ekko wishes for his people, including Powder. In fact, in the official music video for Arcane's theme song Enemies, a Firelight is shown crawling out of Powder's mouth, and Powder immediately turns into Jinx. This indicates to me that the Firelight, a symbol of hope and freedom, was lost to Powder and all that was left is Jinx, which explains the crow behind her during her fight with Ekko. Crows are often symbolized as harbingers of doom and are signs of bad luck, essentially making them animal equivalents of a Jinx. Ever since Vi called Powder a Jinx, this ingrained in her a deep sense of guilt that took over her entire personality and caused a deep psychosis that would eventually turn her into Jinx. Powder accepted the role that her sister harshly put on her and became the Jinx that everyone said that she was. Now, much like the crow, she is a harbinger of doom and a bad luck charm to all who encounter her. The Firelight escaping Jinx's mouth in the Enemies video paints this melancholic picture that if Vi and Jinx weren't separated, they could have both ended up alongside Ekko as Firelights fighting to help their people. However, because this world is cruel, we end up back on the bridge. The abstract way in which time is portrayed during the bridge fight also gives us a glimpse into how both characters have grown up during the time skip. Ekko uses his memory of playing with Powder to inform his next move. He constantly recalls losing to her in their old games and memorized the way that she shoots as a child. He uses this memory to learn his lesson and adapt to get closer to her and close the gap. This tells us that his growth involved a lot of trial and error and that he is constantly adapting to his mistakes, a vital point of his character both in this show and how you play him in League of Legends. Jinx, on the other hand, has the exact same movements and style of shooting that she's had since she was a child. This indicates to us that she is still stuck in the past, still stuck as that scared little girl who was called a Jinx and betrayed and abandoned by her big sister. This is why Ekko ended up winning in this conflict. Ekko grew while Powder regressed. The entire fight took only a few seconds in real time because, again, Ekko is always precise with his timing. The fun and dynamic colors were immediately cut out when we returned to the cold and gritty world where the little boy who wanted to save his people has to end the life of the girl who didn't want to be saved. This takes us to the defining moment in this entire conflict. At the very end of the fight, after Ekko delivers a brutal amount of damage to the girl he used to care about, for a brief moment he sees a glimpse of that same girl. That girl that he grew up with, that he played with, that he got into trouble with, and who he even had a crush on was now right in front of his fist. You can clearly see on his face that Ekko was prepared to do anything he had to stop Jinx, but that he never imagined he'd have to hurt Powder to do it. Jinx, or perhaps it was Powder, ends the conflict by dropping one last bomb to take them both out. It's unclear in this moment if Powder came back for a split second or if Jinx did this as a manipulation tactic to beat Ekko. However, there are hints in the lyrics to the song Dynasties and Dystopia which plays throughout Ekko and Jinx's fight on the bridge. This song perfectly captures the conflict between these two former childhood friends. It reads as a dialogue between Ekko and Jinx reminiscing on their childhood growing up in a quote-unquote gothic underground city, that being Zaun, where they all had to sin to survive. Jinx begins by saying that her chaotic rampages and wanton violence was how she was able to conquer the harsh society of Zaun. The line, "Everything I know I am, you should go and save yourself," is an indication to Ekko that Powder is gone and that Jinx is happy and content being Jinx. She tells Ekko that he should be more worried about himself rather than rescuing Powder. The next line, "Thought you had my number, congratulations you played yourself," is an arrogant boast from Jinx to everyone who thinks she should return to being Powder again. It's saying that no one understands anything about why she had to become Jinx in the first place. In this world, Powders don't survive, but Jinxes thrive. This line also foreshadows the end of their battle when Jinx pulls out her bomb, where Ekko essentially plays himself by hesitating to stop Jinx after mistaking her for Powder. The next lines of the song speaks about beating the odds, rising to the occasion, beating gods, and rolling with a squad of champions. While this is a reference to League of Legends with the term champions, it also shows us that this is definitely Ekko talking, since Jinx rolls alone. While she does have Silco, she doesn't have a squad in the same way that Ekko has his Firelights. The song also talks about rising up, overcoming adversity, and building a community, which are things that we see Ekko do in Arcane. Later in the song, Jinx returns, solidifying her stance that she is not changing herself, stating that she's doing it her way and that she's not going to change it up. She states that Jinx is the logical and rational conclusion to the chaotic environment that she grew up in. Through this song, Ekko states that he had to strengthen his resolve to survive, to get smarter and help everyone else, and eventually build a dynasty. Meanwhile, Powder had to lose her sanity and become Jinx to survive in this dystopia. Hence why the song is called Dynasties and Dystopia. Deep down, Ekko vs Jinx tells the story of two children who were denied their childhood by a world that hated both of them. One child adapted to the world and strives to change it, while the other is consumed by it and proceeds to consume everyone else along with it. Their fight was basically the only scene the two of them shared together after the time skip, and it told us everything we needed to know about their dynamic, their history, and how they changed as people. And it was all done through gorgeous visuals, excellent music composition, and breathtaking animation. This is why I hold the opinion that Ekko vs Jinx is the best fight in animation. But this is where you come in. Do you agree with me here? Are there any other things about this fight that I missed? Did I get anything wrong? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll catch you next time with some more lukewarm takes.